Okay, so this video is entitled The Top-Down Method. And what I'm really referring to here is how we should approach mixing from the top down. And that actually comes from the way we did things back on analog consoles. You see, digital consoles don't do a great job, I feel like, of recreating this feel and this look that we had with analog consoles. Because you see, as many knobs as there are throughout a big console, really it all comes down to just focusing on one channel at a time and understanding how everything starts from the very top and works its way down the chain. So when you start at the top, you see you've got your preamp or your gain. The same thing goes on your digital console as well. That's the first thing that happens. After that, you've got a low cut. Usually you may have a pad or any kind of phase controls. Those are usually right there. And those are the first things that you need to dial in on your board. And we'll go into more detail of like what it looks like to actually dial a channel in a later video. But what I'm trying to get at here is this. Starting out with the gain, that then flows into your EQ. After that, it goes into any inserts you may have, which will be things like a compressor or a gate. Those things on an analog console would be outboard gear, so you'd have to make sure you set that up properly and have enough gain in your system to go into those components correctly. Followed by that, everything goes into the aux channels, spits out to wherever you're sending it to, in-ear monitors, maybe a stage floor wedge, wherever it's going. All of those things are affected by what happens at the very top, and everything subsequently after that is affected from whatever happened prior to it. Now on digital boards, I've yet to really find most digital boards do a good job of really helping you understand that this is actually the flow of things. So what I recommend is when you step up to a digital board, you think like that. You look at the analog console in your head and go, okay, what would be the first thing in the chain? Gain. Okay, let me get that dialed in. Okay, next EQ. Let's get that work done because that's going to affect my next thing, which is going to be either my gate or my compressor, whatever it's going to be. And so digital consoles don't always show that, but you have to remember that there is a flow to everything. And that flow is really the best way to set up your mix for success, is to follow the flow of the signal from top to bottom, going through each step and making sure that each step is done properly and set up correctly. So that way you have a good quality sound source for each processing that you do. If you do this, you're setting yourself up for such a massive amount of success because any changes you need to make will usually be something that needs to be done after these things. If you go back and go adjust the gain after you've done everything else, well, that's going to affect how your compressor responds, how your EQ actually responds. If you gain things up, you actually are adding noise to your signal a little bit. You're going to be raising the noise floor, which we'll talk about that later when we talk about gain. But you're going to start affecting things that you may not have wanted to. So doing your best to work in that kind of signal flow from top to bottom is the best way to ensure you're going to have a good quality sound. So when it comes to digital boards, just try and keep that in mind. I recommend going through the motions of starting with your gain, going then into EQ, then maybe adding a gate if you need it, or a compressor if you need it, and then start sending that to your aux sends for whatever it needs to go to. Your fader is the last thing in the chain because it's only going to know what to do with whatever you give it. So if you don't give your board a lot of signal before it hits your fader, well, pushing that fader up is not going to really do a whole lot because that's not what it's intended to do. It's intended to control the level of whatever that big sound source that you've created with all those other processing, and then mix it to the level it needs to be appropriately done at. So with analog consoles, it's really easy to just follow it all the way down. Digital consoles, depending on your make and model, you may have to kind of think about that as you go.